everyone needs to run a spreadsheet when they're working with numbers. It's the one thing I'm not good at. Having studied law, I'm better with words. I'm always interested in people who know how to run spreadsheets. Roark, Janis from Utah. Roark found Bitcoin at block 175895 and never looked back. He is involved in supporting and leading many projects, including BitBooks. Using his capital, financial, and software experience, he and his partners have a goal in 2026 to donate BitBooks to 1,000 local project organizers and companies accepting Bitcoin in circular economies, which I think is a great, great initiative. With no further ado, please come up and school us and enlighten us on a great topic.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we had a few people here, because probably accounting is one of the most boring topics in the planet. But the reality is, in fact, let me tell you a story as I get started. And this is a workshop, so I'm going to take 10 or 15 minutes, share a few slides, and talk about some things just to introduce, and then I really want to make this a workshop and talk about maybe some of your businesses or projects or things where you can see the problem that I'm going to talk about. But just a little background. I graduated with an accounting degree in 1985, and by that time knew I didn't want to be an accountant. But I was married and had one child, and my wife said, we're done with school. We're going to go make money instead. So go figure it out. And so I moved into sort of marketing, pricing, finance-related positions, but then ended up in supply chain. And I'm old enough that supply chain wasn't even a degree at that time. It was part of operations. So, but I found my home there for many years. I was on the operations side and eventually on the software side, and then ran warehouse management system companies. So I gained a lot of experience in software. Always adjacent to accounting. It was useful information, but I didn't want to be an accountant. The problem is that when I got into Bitcoin, I think you may have read the block number wrong. It wasn't 17 something. That makes me sound like a real OG. 7-1, yeah, 7-1, yeah. I don't remember the exact number. I have to look it up, but when I got into Bitcoin, I just went quickly down the rabbit hole. I won't tell my whole story, but one of the first things I realized, owning businesses and doing personal financial management in software, I was like, well, how do you keep track of Bitcoin as money? Because I immediately realized it was a store of value, and you could hold it as an asset, but I was like, you can spend and receive this. Like a wallet's like a bank account. It's what I was realizing or visualizing in my mind. So I immediately went to, well, how would I incorporate this into my QuickBooks? Or into my, I use a program in the US called You Need a Budget, YNAB. I think it's global now. And that was for personal financial management. And I just thought, well, how do I do this? So I started researching. None of them supported Bitcoin as a currency. You could fake it and put in sats with no decimals with some currencies that don't use decimals. But then it's going to have a different symbol. It wasn't workable. And then the other problem you have is that we still live in this fiat world where sometimes you need to reprice your Bitcoin into dollars for one purpose or another, right? Or you have a mixed environment. So that was about 4 years ago. And I actually sat down within a day or two of learning about Bitcoin. I wrote a one-page document that was kind of like, it's what BitBooks is now, although BitBooks is a lot more than that, but it was like, somebody has to create this. It has to be there somewhere. So I just kept looking, and about a year and a half ago, I just came to the conclusion nobody else is doing it. There's some people that say they are, but they're really focused on the tax. They're focused on cost basis and capital gains calculation to pay taxes. They're not actually producing financial statements. And then the systems don't look like accounting systems do. They don't have a chart of accounts. They don't manage assets and liabilities and owner's equity and all the pieces that you normally have in an accounting system. And so I just decided we had to build it. I think sometimes Bitcoin finds us, or a project in Bitcoin finds us, and that's what this was for me. So as much as I didn't want to be in accounting, and I don't really like to do accounting, this has been fun. Because for one, it was building software, which I love to do. Two, I could see a real need in the community, and so it feels good to do something that is going to contribute. But three, it's a complex problem actually to solve, at least to scratch down the layers to get to the point where you kind of understand how does this work as Bitcoin, and how does it work with fiat, and how do you manage that in software? So it wasn't as simple as I thought it might be, which maybe is why nobody was doing it. But here we are. So where do I point? Okay. Maybe you can just advance for me. There's only a few slides, so. Okay, so how many in here have a spreadsheet of some sort tracking your Bitcoin? I mean, gave up? It's really hard to do on a spreadsheet. But if you have a business and you use, say, Blink Wallet, chances are you're downloading the CSV file and then trying to figure out how to categorize all those expenses. You're looking at your wallet, and it's like, I don't remember what this was for. It doesn't tell you who it was paid to. It doesn't tell you sometimes in the memo. Sometimes you can write something, sometimes you can't, but depending on how the payment's processed, right? And so it's a nightmare to go back and figure that out. And there's no software to tie it all together anyway. And so everybody literally is on spreadsheets. And as it says here, most projects start with a simple Google sheet. What do you call them? Sheeties? What do you call Google Sheets? Spreadies.
No, but Sheets
is it the same thing?
Excel yeah.
What do you call it here in Cape Town, though? Okay.
Either like Excel or
But you called it a spreadie, I think. Spreadie. I haven't heard of spreadie before. We just call it spreadsheets. That's a new one? Okay. I thought maybe it was a local thing. So at first it feels manageable, like it's not so hard, you get started, but pretty soon it becomes really difficult to track. The manual entry becomes just too much. Yes, you can upload the spreadsheets or the CSV files, but it just gets unwieldy. There's no tracking. If you change something, it's like, it just is what it is, right? And then as I mentioned before, you have to remember who it went to or where it came from, where it went, what it was for. Never mind that you can't even assign accounts to it, like income accounts or expense accounts, or track it as an asset versus a liability. It's not, you can't track it like real money. Like you would never do your business accounting in a fiat world inside of a spreadsheet. You would get Xero, QuickBooks, something, right? Okay, so that's the problem. If you can advance, or can I try again? Okay. So what most people do is they try to use the wallet note. Okay, I've actually experimented with this a lot, where I actually put in information. I say from, to, and then what it's about, right? That still doesn't keep track of it from an accounting standpoint in terms of like what account in the chart of accounts, like what type of expense is it or something like that. But at least I had some information. But then I ran into this problem where if somebody gives me a Lightning invoice, they've already put whatever memo in it they want. I just pay it, and there's no way, like Blink doesn't offer me a way, Stripe does this, but Blink doesn't offer you a way to go in and add your own note to it, which I could do. Like if you go to the takeout and pay there, and it uses Money Badger, it puts in their Money Badger, and actually it's pretty good information. It's Money Badger, it says it was timeout, I guess it's called, right? Or does it take timeout? And then it shows the rand amount. But it still doesn't tell you exactly which store it was, right, that you bought from. So it just, there's always missing information. And what's really interesting is Kamal, if some of you might know Kamal, he's with Blink. He and I had a conversation about 6 months ago about this topic. And I told him I thought the problem was that those developing Lightning didn't appreciate the accounting requirements. And he said, no, you're wrong. He said, it's about privacy. He said, it's very intentionally designed to be private. And he said, don't underestimate the Lightning developers. They know what they're doing, and they've thought way ahead about where this is all going. He's the one who encouraged me to start attending these types of conferences. So I went to El Salvador, had a marvelous experience, went to Medellin a couple of weeks ago, spoke there. Now I'm here. I've kind of found my Bitcoin home in terms of conferences, and I love this community and being part of it. But I give him credit for kind of getting my head turned around and go, no, there's this privacy layer that exists, and it's intentional. Which then, while I was building BitBooks, thinking we were just going to connect to that, I realized there's more functionality we need, and I'll talk about that as we go along. But what's really needed to do accounting is the what, why, who, precise timestamps, and you need the precise timestamps if you have to do fiat valuation to produce a fiat income or statement or a balance sheet. Chart of accounts, for those who are bean counters here, you know what a chart of accounts is. That's all your different income, expense types and statements and things you need. And then you need some cost basis tracking. You need it for capital gains, but we're not focused on the tax thing, but you do need to know the cost. And basically, the gap that it exists today is you can't answer these questions. What did I actually earn? To whom did I pay? Can I afford to restock right now? Especially if you're selling in Bitcoin, buying in fiat, right? Which some businesses have that issue. And how much do I owe in taxes? So we are trying to solve that problem. Can you advance? So here's how we think about where this fits, is you have layer one, which is the blockchain, of course. It's secure, unchangeable. There's many attributes, but those to me are the two most important, particularly as they relate to accounting. Layer two payments are fast and they're private. And that privacy is really important. If you listen to, I was in Medellin a couple weeks ago and Obi gave a tremendous presentation about privacy. If you haven't seen it, go online and find it. It's about 5 minutes long. He has like 3 words per slide, but it was so impactful. As it always is when he talks about stuff. That's Obi from Fedi. And it was the BTC Medellin conference. I'm sure it's still up on YouTube. So what we think, how we look at BitBooks, or Bitcoin accounting in general, is that there's application layers that are being built that sit on top of layer one and layer two and integrate with them, but they're private to you. So they're useful, they're insightful, they provide you information you need, but they're not public. It's not a public ledger in any way. There's no data being transmitted out. It may be in a cloud and a hosted system if you don't want to host it yourself, but that's still your own set of data that you own, or you could even host it yourself. But the idea is that this application layer communicates with these. So if we think specifically about payments, if you were to make a Blink payment, or go to make a payment of any kind, if you actually started at the application layer, you would be able to collect that little bit of data you need and say, oh, I'm paying this restaurant or this store, here's what I'm getting. Maybe you don't worry about the account that it's going into yet. The wallet, yes, but not like the accounting account, because that can be sorted out if you know who you paid and what it was for. And then the accounting system can trigger into the payment layer the payment itself, which is now private. But that payment is linked internally in the application layer to that data you've collected to answer the question. So when I started this whole process, I thought we were just going to connect to the API. So Blink has an API. As a user, you probably just download the CSV. But if you're building a system, you can connect to their API, pull all this data. But we immediately realized we couldn't figure out, okay, we got this transaction. It's the same problem as the CSV and the spreadsheet, right? So that's when it dawned on us, oh, we have to turn this around. This needs to be where the activity happens. The payment is almost abstracted away from that information. It's just the way you pay, and it's very private. You don't even need a memo, because if you know the hash or something else, or the Lightning invoice, that's the tie back to the application layer. So what we decided to do, we're in Bitcoin. We believe in free and open source. So we've built, BitBooks is actually built on this thing called a Bitcoin accounting engine, which will be open sourced in the next few months. We also are building a tool that's called the Bitcoin Integration API. We will brand it for ourselves as the Bitcoin Connector. It's sort of like Plaid, and I'm sure many countries have these APIs where you can connect to one API and it interconnects to all the banks. That's kind of the same thing, but in the Bitcoin world. So as I put up here, this will be a free and open source software. We created a .org called the Bitcoin Accounting Collaborative that's intended to kind of bring accounting people together in the Bitcoin space to define best practices, maybe lobby GAAP and some of these other things. But most importantly, it will have this open source software. So we're just going to donate it to that organization. Then we're going to turn around as BitBooks and commercialize it in terms of packaging it, hosting it, providing services support. We have a team of accountants overseas in Pakistan that are really knowledgeable on Bitcoin accounting that can actually do the bookkeeping services, not the tax, but the actual accounting or bookkeeping or closing the books each month and auditing. So that's how we'll monetize it, but we want to give the software away because we're hoping that we'll have some competitors actually. Like, I don't think BitBooks could support every single company in the world that's going to be using Bitcoin. So we want to give this, and we'll actually help our competitors, okay, to start. We just feel that that's what this space is about, and there will be enough money to be made that we'll pay our bills and we'll take care of things. So thank you. Any questions on that? This is a workshop, so I'm going to talk about a few things, so interrupt me if you want. This is not a talk like my later one is. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Yeah. Yeah, you could download it if you have the technical skills. I mean, obviously, it's like anything on GitHub. You have to know how to download it, set it up, host it, but the software is there. So, and there's two reasons to open source. One is so that anybody can use it. The other so it's auditable. Because we're not holding funds, we're only tracking, but we may have XPub information, we may have API access to your Blink wallet or to your LN whatever, LN bits or whatever. And so it's important that the software be open source so that as a community, those that are technical enough can verify to those of us who are not, to say this thing's clean. It's not taking your information, it's not doing anything it shouldn't be.
But independent bookkeepers will be able to use this for the existing clients.
Yes.
And not go through your Pakistani team.
Yes, yes. So that's the accounting services we provide are optional services. So yes, so if you're a bookkeeper, you have a bookkeeper, you could literally say, just let's sign up for BitBooks. And then you can do all your fiat accounting in it. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But if you have any Bitcoin wallets in your business, then you will be able to track them like a bank account in the same way you would a traditional bank account.
So would it be similar what you're offering to like zero accounting?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And they don't offer a Bitcoin option. If they do, and a few of them do, what it is a plugin that treats Bitcoin as an asset, not as a wallet. It's almost like it's stock. And they're saying, what's the value of this asset that I'm holding? And then that you write it up or down, when you close the books based on did the value go up or down.
Zero, I think where they came apart from that it's quite accessible, is that you can use it in your business if you want to, but you can also link it to your accountant who then
Yes.
So your bookkeeping becomes quite easy, and then you've
Yes.
got things like Dext, where you can take a photo of a whatever printout.
Yep.
And that also goes into Zero.
Yes.
And it makes your bookkeeping like
So much easier.
So much easier.
Yes.
The basis of before you're going to do financials,
Yeah.
and before you do that is the bookkeeping. Because when I had a business say 10 years ago, like for provisional tax, which is every 6 months. You then have to go back, because I kept physical invoices and things as the business owner now, give the bookkeeping to my actual accountant who's going to run the financials. So there's definitely a difference between bookkeeping, keeping track of that thing, then doing your actual accounting
And the financial
and
statements,
then
right?
paying your tax, and then managing how you want to pay less tax from an expense perspective.
Yes.
And that all ties together.
Yes, and that's exactly what BitBooks will do. So and that's why we named it BitBooks, because QuickBooks, a lot of people know, and so there's an immediate understanding of what we're doing, but with a Bitcoin aspect to it. Yeah. So one of the really important things, so BitBooks is the Bitcoin accounting engine. That's its generic name. BitBooks is how we're branding our version of it. Okay, others will brand it in other ways, but we will all collaborate. Like our commitment is, if we add a new feature, we're going to put it back into the free and open source version so anybody else can use it. We hope that others will do the same. We'll license it in a way that copyleft, as they call it, which requires that anybody who uses it also contribute back, so that we as a community, we're all benefiting from that. So basically what it does, it's not just a wallet viewer. There are applications out there. You can plug all your wallets in. It'll tell you your balances. That's still not accounting yet. Like, that's just looking up your bank balance, basically. It doesn't tell you the transactions, what they were for. It doesn't allow you to produce an income statement or a balance sheet. So what we do is we sit on top of the payment solutions. We watch the transactions happen. We pull them in, or they can be initiated in our system. Or you could simply take a picture of a receipt for your lunch that you paid in Bitcoin, just put it in there, and then the accountant, when the transaction comes in, will be able to match the receipt and go, oh, I know where, you know, Almo was. He was having this, and it was lunch, and he can tie that then to this sort of private blind payment that happened in Lightning, okay? So one of the things that you have to do when you have a dual currency system is you have to capture the fiat value of whatever your fiat currency is of that transaction in Bitcoin. So if you're a miner, for example, and you're receiving mining income, and that's your business, every time you get paid, you have to know what the fiat value of that payment was at that point in time. So we automatically capture that so that we can produce a fiat financial statement or a Bitcoin financial statement. And you can decide to say which is my base currency, which is my alternate currency. Yep. So we will pull it from a series of exchanges. So it'll be a transparent calculation. I mean, there's always different spot prices, right, constantly. So what we'll do is get 2 or 3, for each currency that we have to do this in, we'll get 2 or 3 at least sources that are considered reliable, and then we'll bring those together, average them, and that will be done every minute. So the auditors are telling me as long as we have the transaction within the last 60 seconds, that should pass audit. It's close enough. So even with volatility, you're kept. Yeah, exactly. But they're saying that's enough real time that you know, there's no manipulation and it's consistently applied. So we'll be doing that. But that's the plan. And as we go into a market, we'll work with the first customers in that market to define what are the exchanges that we feel together are reliable. And then we'll just, like I said, average those, pull them in and use APIs to pull the data. And then most importantly, at the end, is this dual ledger creation. And I think I have another slide, either in this deck or it may be in the one in my talk later on. But basically, and I kind of mentioned this, we're going to be producing 2 sets of financial statements at the same time. The base one will be whatever you wanted in. It can be Bitcoin. Or if you'd rather do fiat, either way, it doesn't matter your base, but you can literally, at the click of a switch, reproduce your financial statement in the other currency, okay? And I'll tell you, when we built the first version of this, which I only used in my mining companies and whatnot, just for myself, and it didn't even have the balance sheet. But the first time I was able to see the mining business, P&L, in Bitcoin, and then compare it month to month, it was amazing. I mean, you know that everything costs less over time, but when I did it, we were actually in a run-up, and my hosting costs for the mining are dollar contracts. So each month I was having to convert less Bitcoin to pay the dollar invoice, okay? And I couldn't see that when I was looking at it in fiat, okay? You've had that experience? Yeah, so that's what we need to talk about, because it was mind-blowing for me. It honestly was. I was like, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, is this right? I have more Bitcoin profit this month than I did last month. Why? It's mining. I mean, it's pretty regular. And I started digging in the numbers, and it's because when I converted to USDT to pay that invoice that I have to pay in dollars, because that's the way it's denominated, it took less Bitcoin to do that than it did last month. And then I started to, it's just like you can see what theoretically you know, but you see it.
So when you draw your profit and loss, it would be the Bitcoin price for September 2025. No matter if you're sitting in Jan, it would still use September's Bitcoin.
No, it uses it at the time of the transaction. So let's say you're collecting revenue every day, constantly through the day, like you're a merchant. Every sale transaction that you receive Bitcoin, it's valued in fiat at that moment in time. And we're tracking that. So in the database of the ledger, we're tracking both the fiat amount and the Bitcoin amount. Every transaction. Any wallet, basically any bank transaction, and that includes credit cards, because credit cards are like a bank transaction. They just create a liability you have to pay later, but that's still a transaction. So even if you use the credit card to make the purchase and then pay it in Bitcoin later, or whatever, however you set that up, we're creating a Bitcoin value for that fiat purchase at the moment in time when you did it. Okay? Now the balance sheet is done at the moment in time of the as of date, because that's the liability and those assets and owner's equity are valued based on Bitcoin value to the fiat at that moment. The beauty of what we found here, just one second, Robert, and I'll come to you. The beauty of what we found with this is that if you prefer to still see fiat, because that's where your mind is, but you have a few Bitcoin wallets, you can start with the fiat and then flip it to the Bitcoin. Or you can do vice versa. Either way, it doesn't matter your entry point, you can do both. Go ahead.
So, on the balance sheet piece, I know in the US 24, 25, they changed the accounting rules so that you
Yes.
weren't impacted by the impairment on your Bitcoin.
Correct.
Have you worked in any other countries where that is still the rule? And how did companies react to that? Because
Yeah.
when they get audited on their books and everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
folks have to get badly when they're really not doing badly.
Yeah, so I haven't run into it in the other countries yet, but we don't focus on the tax side, which really you're going to take the balance sheet, and then you're going to have to make a tax version of it. And so right now, you know, because I'm in the US, we're thinking of that, so it's not a problem. But my accountant, who's in Pakistan, brought it up right away, and he said, you're going to have some entries, some journal entries that are done to account for that. He also pointed out that you have a gain even on the Bitcoin that you have on your income statement. There's a currency gain or loss essentially that happens in fiat. So let's say you're doing it on Bitcoin. So your numbers in Bitcoin are your numbers. We always say one Bitcoin to one Bitcoin today still, right? So those numbers work, but when you translate it into fiat, if you have to produce a financial statement, say for a bank or a loan or something you have to do in the fiat world, you're going to have this difference because the P&L in dollars, let's say, is going to come out differently than it is in Bitcoin, and then there's going to be an entry that's non-Bitcoin affecting, but that is fiat that says this is what I did have a gain or a loss on it, and you will see that. I mean, it'll vary the volatility over time, just like the value of Bitcoin goes up over time. You'll see that quarter after quarter, you know, year after year, it's improving. And some of these things still have to be worked out. I mean, this is in layers, we're kind of going, but they're all the things we're thinking about, and what we're looking to do is just partner with our customers, and we have a development team that can keep iterating on this, and what we're also hoping is that other companies in some countries may pick up the open source software and kick off a project of their own, figure out, say, how to do everything in Kenya, contribute it back to the community, and then all of us can benefit from that. So we're just not the only ones. You know, there's too many countries for us to probably build every single one. Okay, next. How are we doing on time? About 20 minutes? Okay, left, okay. So you mentioned this donation of 1,000 instances of BitBooks. This was really inspired by our visit at the El Salvador conference. My brother, who's my partner, co-founder in this, we went together, and we were a day into that conference, and we were sitting at dinner, and we're like, we got to do something to help. This is like, yeah, this circular economy thing's really exciting. What could we do to help? And we said, well, it doesn't really cost us a lot to host software for 1,000 companies. It's a small, really small investment. And frankly, we get a lot back from it too, because we're going to get a lot of user feedback from people that are in the trenches every day. And what we found, we went to Berlin, we went to Bitcoin Beach, and we talked to these, you know, what are you doing? Oh, we're all on spreadsheets. You know, what are the problems? We started to hear the same thing over and over. We're like, oh, well, if we gave you this software, would you use it? Of course we would. They're all like chomping at the bit, ready to go. So we're really excited. And when we came up with 1,000, it felt like a huge number. But we realized just here alone, there's 40-something circular economies. Say maybe 20 are active, but they each have dozens and dozens of merchants in them. We don't have to touch every merchant. We just need to train the circular economy to use it inside their own project, And then they're all doing education anyway. They can incorporate this in and educate and give away the license and help their users. And so we think we can scale really easily. We've run some models that we probably even will do more than 1,000. Like, we're not going to cut it off there. That's just a goal, to reach. But the idea is to go out, and there's really 3 focuses. The nonprofits, so it doesn't even have to be a circular economy. Like BitVocation is a nonprofit. There's some others out there that are interested. We'll give it to anybody who's just trying to contribute to the space. The project leads for the circular economies, obviously, and then their community members, which are usually the businesses, that are trying to grow. We already have, like, Blink's going to be a customer. They'll pay. There's other, commercial companies that have money that will pay us. And so we feel like it'll be easy to cover our costs at the same time make this donation. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so what I wanted to do is, rather than me present a case study, I told you a little bit about my experience with the Bitcoin mining company, but let's talk about one of your companies. I don't know, Robert, you've got some companies. Are you willing to share a little bit? Like, what are your challenges? How does this help?
The main challenge for me is to get my sister in Kahuna as well onto the Bitcoin standard. The management team is on the course.
Okay.
They're busy trying to do what they can themselves outside of the normal day-to-day stuff that they're doing. So that's why I'm working with Jordan. We're trying to do this. And build this for that company, and build a shadow P&L that we can show the board, my sister sits on it, this is what the P&L and the treasury would look like if we'd been able to do this for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
So just taking all the data in and reporting all, doing all the things.
Yeah. So here's a way to go about that, I think. Number one, it's open source. And is he a developer, like he's technical? So we can give him a copy of the software. He can do what he needs to make it work in your environment. And if he can get all the accounting data from the last 5 years in fiat, he's got it. He can suck it in. Obviously, he'll have to run some scripts and things to get the old exchange rates and set it up. But when he's done with that, it should be able to provide P&L, balance sheet at any time during those 5 years, quarterly, annually, whatever, probably annually if you're going 5 years, and just show what's happening. And I'm going to talk about this in my next talk, but the fiat P&L lies to you because it looks like you're making more profit. But if you normalize that to the value and take away the inflation, you could manually try to figure that out, but essentially it's not true because you're always chasing this inflation, right? Whereas when Bitcoin terms, if you can show I made more Bitcoin than last time, last quarter, last period, whatever, then that's real true growth, right? Just in numerically. And that's the goal, is how do I bring more profit, Bitcoin profit to my bottom line that goes into my owner's equity on my balance sheet. That's, in essence, you're stacking Bitcoin by doing it through a profitable business. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That will be an issue for more companies to be able to avoid if they're going to get prepared on their financial audits.
Yeah.
I need a lived example.
Yes. So I think you're where I was, say, a year and a half ago, where I just stuck it into my business and tried to force fit it, and I think we can do the same thing, and happy to collaborate on it because we'll learn from it. You'll benefit. That's why we're open sourcing the software, so it'll be good to work with him. Anybody else thinking about these pain points, the tracking chaos? Is there somebody who's willing to share if you're using spreadsheets to try to run a business and keep track of your Bitcoin? What is your experience with that?
Because I was earning, I said I'll project.
You got a big voice.
Just because I was, generally what I was doing was I was buying Bitcoin and earning Bitcoin at the same time, and also trying
You were like an exchange almost.
All of it is a basic like spreadsheet
Yeah.
that I had to now figure out which one was my earning Bitcoin, which was the Bitcoin I bought for me versus the Bitcoin I bought for you. And this is over 3, 4, 5, 6 months out of that. Gave up. So this would be an easier way for that.
And this would track that, because again, you have a chart of accounts and you can say, this is Bitcoin that I purchased for somebody else. It's an asset liability, but you can start to track just like you would with fiat. If you were doing the same thing, you'd owe people money, they owe you, whatever, as it moves around, but you can track it. Yeah, absolutely.
So you would run a wallet as a bank?
Yes, that's the key differentiator for what we've done than anybody else. Everybody else looks at it as an asset only. We're saying it's not an intangible asset, it's a wallet, it's a bank account. And that was the breakthrough. Once I kind of figured out how to do that, then all the rest started to fall into place.
And you mentioned QuickBooks, so is it compatible with QuickBooks?
So, not yet, but Jeff Booth and I were in a fireside chat, and he brought that up a couple of weeks ago in Columbia, and he said, some people are not going to want to leave their QuickBooks or their Xero or whatever. Why don't you create something that does what you do on the front, but they can just export their data to QuickBooks where it lives in what they're used to? And I was like, I don't know why I didn't think of that. But Jeff's pretty smart, so. We're going to. We haven't done it yet. He just 2 weeks ago suggested it, but it's high on our list of things to do, especially the first customer that we run into that says, oh, I really want to use it, but I'm still going to have to use my QuickBooks. I mean, that you guys may be a case for that. Whatever your sister, she's doing with the company, you may still want to run parallel books and have that integrate. So yes. Yeah, I mean, our hope long term is that you won't run it concurrently. We do everything QuickBooks does, but we don't have the brand reputation yet, and all of that. But you can also use this in a fiat-only company, because it takes all the fiat wallets or bank accounts. You could run it instead of QuickBooks. So we see it as an opportunity also to orange pill businesses to say, well, just buy this and use it. It's better, less expensive, whatever our angle is. And then if you ever do get a Bitcoin wallet, you'll be able to track it like a bank account. And you can't do that in your current system. So a couple of other angles on that, for example, you've probably heard of Square and what they've done in the US. So Square is one of Jack Dorsey's companies. It's a point of sale terminal. There's 4 million merchants. They have to turn it on, but it will allow them to accept Bitcoin payments. So we're going to build a version of BitBooks that's in their app store that the merchants can download, because the first time they accept a Bitcoin payment and put it in a Bitcoin wallet, which Block will set up for them, they're going to have this issue. Well, how do I account for it? Because my accounting, whatever they're using that Square integrates to, won't support it. So we want to put that in the app store, so when they go figure out like Bitcoin wallet or something, we come up and then they can use it. But again, they'll mostly be in fiat world. That's okay with us. We're going to go where the people are, get it in there, and then enable them to receive Bitcoin when they do. Kind of like, yeah, exactly. Yes, Ben and I have talked. We met in El Salvador. Yeah, we've talked quite a bit. Yes. How do we tie that together? Yes. So that's what the integration API does, is it will integrate to, say, the Bitcoin or the Blink wallet. So you'll have to put in your API key and your secret and whatever. It'll pull the data in. And let's say you do nothing in BitBooks until you receive that data from Blink. Then you go in and you'll finish out the transaction. You'll assign the account. You'll put in who the payment was to or who you received it from, maybe a notice to what it was for. That is manual, just like the spreadsheet, but better organized and tied together. But where we see the ultimate value is that instead of making the payment from the Blink wallet, now Blink wants to integrate this in, by the way, and they may actually put a white labeled version of BitBooks inside of Blink, which is great. We're happy to support that. Again, it's open source. They do whatever they want. But the way you would do it today, if they haven't done that, is you would go into our system, to BitBooks, create the transaction there to send, and then you could quickly tag. We'll ask you, who are you paying, right? And you'll have a to from list. So if it's the same place you paid last week, you can just select it off the list. You might even use, geolocation on your phone to know the merchants that are nearby you that likely are where you're at. But then when you create the payment, there's two ways to do it. Either it can go out to the Blink API and make the payment for you. Some people may not want us to have that access. We understand that. So Lucas, the CEO of Blink, actually came up with a great idea, which is, why don't we produce a QR code in our app that you can either scan or paste into Blink. So you switch the app, so you control the initiation of the payment. It's a little bit more involved, but it's more secure because we're not going in and initiating the payment in your wallet. Mm-hmm. So we are integrated to BTC Pay Server. So if you're generating the invoice there, we can pull that data in and tie it to who was the customer, what kind of revenue was it. Maybe you have different kinds of services or ways you track your revenue. So we can do that too. But this idea of, we can produce a QR code that allows you to go to the wallet itself and scan was really genius as a bridge, right? Correct.
Because if you paid 97 Rand 70 cents, on the bank statement it will show 97 cents.
It doesn't, yes.
AI, if you scan the slip and AI extracts the information, it matches up. But on the Lightning wallet, that transaction value is slightly different.
Exactly.
1 Rand, 2 or 3
It throws it off, yes.
It doesn't match.
Yeah. And that's why we think, if I were to go back to the slide that showed the layers, we think that you actually may do more transaction in the application layer that goes down into the payment infrastructure to execute a private payment and do it fast, but you're actually creating it in your own wallet or your own application. Fedi is another example. We had a lot of conversation with Obi in Colombia about this and learned about the mini apps, if you're familiar with the Fedi app. So we can create a BitBooks mini app. Money Badger has one, for example, and you can you can basically scan the QR code right there, and then it pays out of your Fedi wallet. And because it's your account, you're authorized. It's not even like we're not even hosting. We're not doing anything. You just use that to create the transaction, collect the pieces of data you need, maybe upload the invoice or the receipt or whatever, so it's tied together. And this will get better. I mean, it's early stages, and we're going to hit some wrinkles, but we think the model is getting it to the point where you could actually have unit of account adoption. Like, we're focused on medium of exchange, which is great, right? But how do you get to unit of account adoption? And it really takes an accounting system to do that, which is what I'm going to talk about in the other session in a little bit. Can you advance this slide? Yeah. Let me just, this is kind of long, but just to show, there's a real challenge in pricing. If you're in a circular economy and you want to price, this blew my mind. If any of you have been to El Salvador and gone to the Bitcoin hardware store that Ronnie has, if you had a chance to go there, but he runs a store that's called the Bitcoin hardware store. Everything in there is Bitcoin related products. You can buy wallets and, all kinds of things. And I'm in there and everything's priced in dollars. I said, Ronnie, why aren't you're the Bitcoin hardware store. You only accept Lightning payments, but everything is based in dollars. I said, why do you do that? And he goes, I don't know, cause. I said, well, how do you buy your stuff? He goes, I pay all my suppliers in Bitcoin. I said, so you know what your margin is? I'm like, you're the perfect case for this. And he goes, yeah, but it's just kind of a hassle, and sometimes, I pay them in Bitcoin, but it's based on a US dollar price and blah, blah, blah. So that got us thinking, we need to create some tools inside of BitBooks, and this is future, like this is not part of the first version, but it's where our mind is going, is how do we create tools that can help you know how to price things, when to restock, based on volatility that can occur. Like maybe don't buy today, wait another couple of weeks. And it's not based on trying to project where the price is going, but rather how do you take the data that's being collected to optimize that? When do you need to reprice in Bitcoin? If your costs are in dollars, then when do you need to change your prices in Bitcoin so you can actually price in Bitcoin? Very preliminary. I don't know that we have all the answers, but we believe, we're calling this kind of like the Bitcoin operating system in a way, beyond just the accounting, is how do we support those kinds of things. The last thing I just mentioned quickly is the reason I spent so much time with Jeff Booth in Columbia is I'm pretty sure that his thesis about everything costing less and going to the marginal cost of production over time, we can produce a new financial statement that shows what he keeps talking about. And if you listen to him ever in a conference or a podcast, he says, we can't understand it because we've never seen it before. And so I went to him, I said, Jeff, I think we can use this. We have all the data. Can you work with us to figure out how to create, we're calling it right now the Booth Index and the Booth Financial Statement. But basically, it'll have a different name, I'm sure. He's too humble to let us call it that. But the idea is, how do we produce another financial statement beyond the P&L and the balance sheet and the cash flow statement that reflects this concept of everything costing less over time and the deflation, right? Which would help your sister probably a bunch too, right? Yeah. Yeah, and these are all things that I had to get into and start building to then see, oh, wait, we have a way to solve some of these problems and things. So that's just a little future. If you can skip to the last slide, I think. We can skip this one, doesn't really matter. So if you scan the QR code, that's our website. You can join the wait list there. You're not obligating yourself to anything. So even if you just want to stay informed, like we're not going to start calling and selling. We may follow up and just see what you want. But particularly if you qualify for the 1,000 donation, sign up for the wait list, and then we'll reach out and connect with you. And that can be for collaboration, Robert, if you want to use that. I mean, it's just really to stay in touch. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Any last question? Got 1 minute. Nope. Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much. Very, very interesting. I'll just say that I'm a lawyer, and I realize that accounting and bookkeeping, running businesses and talking to a lot of people is extremely important. So I'd love to start an accounting company and use BitBooks. Yeah, very, very informative. Thank you so much.